2023 was the worst year for the MCU both critically and commercially, and in this video we are going to look at the past year of the MCU project by project and determine how exactly things could have been changed for the better of this franchise. However, we are not going to let hindsight change anything, including the Hollywood strikes from this past year or Jonathan Majors' eventual firing. This year started with the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and I think it's really understated just how excited people were for this movie in the lead up to release. Prior to getting the first trailer, we learned that this film would kick off Phase 5 of the MCU, and it would be a major part of developing the then newly announced multiverse saga. This was Jonathan Majors' first major appearance as Kang, after the brief foreshadowing we saw in Loki Season 1 nearly 2 years earlier. There was also a ton of excitement around MODOK making his live-action debut, and Bill Murray, who notably stayed away from blockbuster movies, making his first Marvel appearance. The problems with Quantumania stem from the expectations of the studio. Disney expected Ant-Man 3 to perform unlike the prior two entries. The first Ant-Man film had the lowest budget of any MCU movie, with $130 million, and it followed the massively anticipated sequel to The Avengers, so we had some crossover between those two things. Even with that, the film was still speculated to be the first big failure of the MCU, but it ended up doing pretty well, grossing $180 million domestically and $519 million worldwide. Seeing the potential in the character and property, Disney quickly announced that its sequel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, would be set in Marvel's Phase 3, and its budget would be increased to $162 million. This time, Marvel sandwiched the film between two Avengers films, allowing it to capitalize on fans patiently waiting for the closure after the conclusion of Infinity War, leading to Ant-Man and the Wasp grossing $216 million domestically and $622 million worldwide. Now, we come to the planning of Quantumania. Marvel decides they want Ant-Man to be the linchpin of the multiverse saga. He's a character that fans seem to really enjoy, and he just assisted in bringing the possibility of time travel to the MCU, the perfect character to help bring Kang into the fold. However, let's look back at those box office stats. There wasn't a massive increase from the box office numbers of the first film to the second, so why would you make the third film such an important piece of the greater MCU puzzle? Well, I think a lot of it had to do with whose strings Disney was able to pull easily. Peyton Reed, director of the Ant-Man trilogy, isn't known for being a visionary director as much as James Gunn or Sam Raimi. Fans know that he was brought on to do Ant-Man pretty last minute when Edgar Wright dropped out, and he proved to be a pretty competent director. The main problem with Quantumania is that it shouldn't be an Ant-Man film. When you put it alongside the first two films, Quantumania is the clear black sheep of the group. It eliminates the setting, stakes, charm, and most of the lovable cast from the first two films in favor of the mostly new, forgettable characters. Quantumania never feels like an Ant-Man film because it just isn't one. It doesn't evolve the characters in meaningful ways or try and further their arcs. Even Hope, one of the title characters of the movie, has almost nothing to do. It sucks because I really wanted to like Quantumania, and I wanted to be pumped for what was to follow, but I simply couldn't. Now, I think I was pretty clear on what they did wrong. How could they have improved it, though? I think Ant-Man 3 should have been a natural evolution from its predecessor. If they wanted to go a little wackier, my idea would have been MODOK escaping the quantum realm and acting as a herald of Kang. He has a clear motivation to want to go after the protagonists of the Ant-Man movies, and it would be a great way to cap off this trilogy by reintroducing him as the last big bad of Ant-Man. In addition to that, you kind of give him the Loki role from the first Avengers film as the surrogate for Kang to escape the quantum realm and bring his army to Earth. This also allows the overall budget for the movie to come down from its extremely high place. This movie is still the big moment of revealing to the theatrical audience that Kang is a massive threat in this universe while allowing it to still be an Ant-Man film. This would have, in my opinion, been the perfect way to make Ant-Man 3. But now what do you do? What about all the quantum realm antics that we'd be missing out on? Well, that leads me to my next point on what the MCU should be working towards. Phase 3 proved that this works so well, and audiences love to see it, and that's what we need more of in the future of the MCU. Now, you may be thinking, well, clearly that didn't work. Look at the Marvels. That film didn't work because it wasn't three widely known beloved characters teaming up. It was the second Captain Marvel film with the baggage of introducing two characters to a brand new audience that may not be watching Disney+. Imagine if we had just capped off the Ant-Man trilogy and we had Quantumania billed as Ant-Man and the Hulk, or if we're following Guardians 3, Ant-Man and Star-Lord in Quantumania. I just want more small team-ups like Spider-Man and Deadpool or Doctor Strange and Hawkeye, something that would be fun and new for the audience but not rely on a property from Disney+. Think about Civil War and Ragnarok. They were the first big non-Avengers team-up movies in the MCU, and the excitement came because they were directly building off the biggest movies in the series that pretty much everyone was already familiar with, not making minor advances in building relationships that stemmed from a streaming service. Guardians 3 was the next thing to release, and I don't think I need to say that much about it. This film was James Gunn's vision from start to end, and it was the perfect way to cap off the Guardians trilogy. The Guardians movies work so well outside of the grand scheme of the MCU because the characters don't need to rely on connecting to the bigger picture, which is the biggest problem with our next topic. I was really looking forward to this show. Nick Fury in his first starring role and a slower-paced espionage thriller in the MCU sounded like a perfect idea. It never really delivers on what it could have been, though. The plot of this series should have had massive, lasting effects on the MCU, and could have fully delved into the psychology of Nick Fury. The few moments we get that, it is interesting, but the show itself never builds on it in the way you expect to. The plans for the Skrull invasion never really make sense the way it should, and the stakes for the series just aren't interesting enough. Rhodey being revealed to have been replaced since Civil War is a massive mistake that they'll most likely retcon. The series itself is just a gigantic mess, and I don't understand how it got to that point. It's just mind-boggling to me that something that should be as major as a Skrull invasion in the MCU is handled with the same weight as the black market arms dealers from Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's just another minor inconvenience to the governments of the world, rather than the earth-shattering invasion that this should have been built up to be. I hope they return to this plot line and maybe the next Captain America or Thunderbolts, but the way that we see it swept under the rug with its brief mention in the Marvels gives me little hope. Okay, again, we aren't going to act as though we had hindsight for the events that occurred following filming of Loki Season 2, and according to everyone from behind the scenes, nothing needed to be changed from the original plans for the show. While I did enjoy Loki Season 2 quite a bit, I don't think it's as strong as the first season, and the main reason is because there is a problem with focus. In Season 1, there is a main driving force behind Loki's motivations, though they evolve from episode to episode and lead to the point of him not being sure he knows what he wants by the finale. Season 2 gets very lost in what the driving force of the plot is in the middle of the season. I think the beginning and the end of Season 2 are incredibly strong, but the filler to get us there isn't great. And I think this stems from a change in direction from Kate Herron, who did the first season, to the ensemble of different directors we have in Season 2. Similar to Guardians 3, generally audiences really enjoyed Loki, and I think it expanded where it needed to for its own story and for the larger MCU, so I don't think we need to change too much. I think this movie is perfectly fine. It is a genuinely passable Marvel movie. But that's the problem. Captain Marvel is also a perfectly acceptable Phase 1 Marvel movie that did phenomenally at the box office for several reasons. One being that Infinity War left off with Captain Marvel's foreshadowing. Every Marvel fan was at the edge of their seat waiting for Endgame, with Captain Marvel being teased as the character that could fix everything. The movie opened 2 months before Endgame, with the official trailer releasing in time for Captain Marvel's second weekend, which showcased the character character in the film, and making this relatively new character a billion-dollar success. Captain Marvel had a budget of $150 million, on the lower end of the MCU as far as the budget for a movie starring a new character. It ended up making $426 million domestically and over $1 billion worldwide, and its success didn't go unnoticed by Disney. However, perhaps motivated by some fans really disliking Captain Marvel and its lead actress, they pivoted Captain Marvel 2 into becoming The Marvels, with the addition of Miss Marvel, who had a season of her show on Disney+, and Monica Rambeau, who fans became familiar with in WandaVision. Now, the lead characters of the Marvels have teamed up before in the comics, but branding as the Marvels was brand new, and realistically probably what ended up being a big part of the film's downfall. I've talked in earlier videos about how the marketing of the Marvels wasn't wisely planned given how fresh two of its three leads were in the eyes of Marvel fans, but this movie didn't give general audiences anything to be excited about. I think what could have worked in the film's benefit is very similar to what I discussed with Ant-Man 3. If they didn't have faith in Captain Marvel 2, they could have paired her with another beloved fan favorite for this film again. I'll keep suggesting this since it was left open for any Marvel project to take advantage of, but a Star-Lord and Captain Marvel movie. I think there's something interesting about that dynamic that could even work moving forward. I get the connection between Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel and wanting to take advantage of that. I just don't think you gave general audiences enough of a chance to grow attached to either character, where focusing a movie on that team up would have the draw it would for general audiences, let alone comic fans.
What if?
Now, the first season of What If I think is totally fine. It serves its purpose for laying the groundwork of an anthology of stories set in adjacent universes to the MCU, and allows them to try out new things with their characters. Season 2 is mostly exactly what I want this series to be. I still haven't seen the final 2 episodes of this season, but wow, I want more creativity like this for the MCU as a whole. I never knew I wanted to see a neo-noir police procedural starring Nebula or a Die Hard parody starring Happy Hogan, but now I want to see more. The absolute standout so far was the episode following Kahori. I was a little nervous about what this show would do with a brand new character, but after that episode, I want to see more of this character, and I want to see very different versions of characters like this in the future. We are entering a Marvel drought in 2024. The only movie being released is Deadpool 3, and the only series with a set release date is Echo. The future of the MCU is also up in the air following the firing of Jonathan Majors and the Kang Dynasty subtitle being dropped from Avengers 5. Everything I've already talked about is in the rear view. Marvel missed their chance to make those changes, so why bring them up now? The main reason is because I think despite its faults, the MCU isn't beyond saving. We had 10 years of pretty good movies and are just now hitting a rough patch. It may not be the defining cinematic titan that this series was in 2019, but it still has the legs to continue, and it can regain the good grace from general audiences leading up to another massive success. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 proved what audiences want are good movies told by individuals rather than cobbled together messes created by studios based on what they think diehard fans would want to see. Return to the Marvel standard of any of these movies being accessible to anyone looking to be entertained, rather than the current practice of relying on what the audience has already seen of what we've released. I think having the new Marvel Spotlight banner is a good point to start, labeling what parts of the universe will enhance the experience of the films being interconnected, rather than hoping every project will have the same draw as something as big and universally seen as the Avengers. That's all from me though. Let me know in the comments below what you think and what you would do to improve the MCU. Thank you for watching, and click on screen for another video.